Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, multichromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter. And today, I'm going to be showing you 10 palettes that I think of when it comes to like fall time, but that are not Halloween releases. And then I'm going to show you about 10 palettes that I have yet to try, at least try fully, and those are ones that I'm excited about trying through the course of fall. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me. We're getting into it right now. So whenever I have the opportunity, I always love filming palette content, right? Because I could talk about palettes for ages, and I do on this channel. And so the first thing that I wanted to talk about was 10 palettes that I felt like kind of gave me that like fall feeling without necessarily being purely Halloween palettes. The first one I'll show you is this NYX Ultimate Utopia palette, and this palette I really love because it has both like, it generally feels a little bit more cool toned, but it does have some pops of warm tone in here, and I love that you get this whole corner of very, very cool shades. But then everything else over here, you've got like some brassy kind of gold type shades. You've got this kind of, it's not really lime, it's not chartreuse, but it's like a really intense metallic, almost bright olive green. I think there's some really pretty colors in here. Even the colors that are sort of forgettable in this palette, I still feel like they add a lot to the eye looks when you use them. This was a gift from my husband, which I'm sure if you've watched any of my other videos recently, you already know that. But I do think this is a really nice palette, and I think it's perfect for fall. All right, the other big palette that I pulled out that I thought would be great for fall was the Glamlight Michaela Pot 2 palette. And the reason I pulled this one out, I think my little gold pieces are coming out. That bodes well for my eyes. The reason that I pulled this one out is because you have all these like nice kind of swampy olivey greens here, and then you have these kind of golden olivey brassy type shades that I think complement it quite well. The blues and purples I wouldn't say draw me as much for the idea of like a fall toned palette, but I do still think because of the richness of the colors in this palette that you can kind of get away with it. So this one, the olivey greens and golds definitely, but this part here, I think you can make it work. So next up is the Oden's Eye Erd palette, and I picked out two different Oden's Eye palettes. I'll show you the other one here in a minute, but this one is this like all green olivey color story, and obviously that's one of the colors that I feel like is really strong for fall. I feel like we're getting a lot of like olivey kind of shades right now. I love this particular palette because this white appearing shade has such a beautiful like peachy golden shift to it. Every time I go in this palette, I'm like, I have to use that color in some way. I don't know if you're going to be able to see where I swatched it because I swatched it in such an inane place, but yeah, just such a beautiful, beautiful shade. And then this really smoked out metallic green is just stunning on the eyes. Every time I use this palette, I always put that all over the lid, and I think it looks so pretty, so smoky, but it is a kind of interesting take on a smoky palette because it's green and not just like black. The other Oden's Eye palette that I wanted to mention is a little bit softer, and this is the Red Dragon palette from It's Judy. This particular palette, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. You've got those kind of reddy brown shades, and then you've got some pops of olive green. I think it's a beautiful color story. I know this one was limited edition, but I'm sure if you don't have this one in your collection, you probably have some other things that are quite similar to it in terms of that like red, brown, olive color story. Another limited edition thing is the Raw Beauty Kristi App Foresight, and this one I definitely think screams fall, right? Because you have all the like colors that the leaves are going to change. You have kind of these swampy, mossy kind of colors here, and then you have this kind of pop of blue, pop of purple, and then a really nice rich, like, it's a black but it has some really tiny micro sparkle in it, but I just treat it like a matte. But I think this color story definitely gives me that like fall feeling. The two metallics in here I don't find terribly impressive. This one I think is supposed to be a duochrome, like a green with a red base to it, and I just don't think it pulls, like, I don't think it's as impressive as I would like it to be. And then the gold, I could take or leave. I think everything else in here, though, is really pretty. All right. In that same vein, I have the Glaminatrix Nocturnal palette. And this one, I think, came out last fall, if I'm not mistaken. maybe. But I think this one is a really pretty fall palette too. I like that the shades in here, instead of being like more olivey, they almost are more like mustardy, like greeny brown shades. I really like that. I think it's very complementary with this metallic here. I like that you have the purples and the blues to kind of offset it. And then I really like this, what they call murky. I think that's an absolutely great name for this shade. Green with this metallic here, which is a duochrome. It has a stronger base to shift than the one in the At Foresight palette, so I think it works a lot better. And then these two shades, I don't feel like they necessarily go with the like fall theme per se, but I do think that this one makes a beautiful topper, and when I use this palette I tend to go into it even though I'm not sure that it really like matches the rest of the vibe. All right, 4 more. I of course had to include some color pop, so 2 of the most obvious picks for me were Or Kid You Not and Wine and Only. If you like things that are a little bit warmer and redder toned, this might be your jam. And then if you like things a little bit more purple, the Or Kid You Not is a really, really beautiful palette, but I think because you have these like these deep tones here and here, it gives you that sort of like fall, decaying, dried up dead leaves, kind of an aubergine vibe to it. So I really like both of those, and I think they're great additions for fall. When it comes to cool tone palettes, I don't think they scream fall very often, but I thought this one did, which is the ColourPop Troublemaker palette, and it looks like this. I think you have some kind of like grungy, decaying kind of gray shades in here mixed with these deeper eggplanty purple type shades. And then I do really like this duochrome here. I think that one does a really good job at, you know, kind of giving you a little bit more light and interest in the eye look. Even though I don't think cool tones always speak fall, I think in this particular case, this one does speak fall to me. But you'll have to let me know in the comments, do you feel like that one is more winter or do you feel it's more fall? Because I feel like fall right now, of course it's fall, but right now cool tones are really in, so I can make the case. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about for palettes that I've used so far is the Shroud Cosmetics Moonfall palette. And of course, this screams fall because it's all really deep dark tones. You've got these very jewel toned mattes, and then I love these like metallic-y shimmers that are in here. I think are really pretty. They have a lot of like reflectivity and sparkle when it comes to bouncing light around, and overall I think they give looks a lot of like depth and interest. And when I think of fall, I do think that the look should be like deeper, smokier, richer. Almost everything that I'm going to mention here is indie palettes for the stuff that I want to try out for the fall. So switching gears entirely, I'm going to talk about 3 more mainstream releases and then go into my maybe 4 mainstream releases and then go into my indie stuff. The first one, and the one that I think I need to sort of make the case for the most, is the Culture 2 palette from Juvia's Place, which my kids call the egg palette. Which I think is kind of funny. She's 3, so she doesn't really know, but she thinks this kind of looks like an Easter egg, and so she calls it the egg palette. But anyway, this is the color story, and I think because you have all these like kind of swampy, murky greens and sort of pukey, yellowy, chartreusey shades here, that really makes me think a lot about fall. And then this like metallic here with the orange, I don't so much care for the 2 sort of primary colors that are there. And then you have some of these shades in here, which definitely just kind of scream fall to me. The overall like bright, insane packaging patterns and everything definitely doesn't give me a fall vibe, but if you kind of ignore all of that, let that wash away, and you just look at the colors, I think there's a lot of fall here. All right, the other sort of mainstream palettes that I think scream fall: Melt Gemini, which I picked up at the last Sephora VIB sale and want to give this one a try. Obviously you have some really pretty browns here, and then these kind of swampy greens. The olivey swampy greens are definitely my vibe for fall, like if you haven't already figured that out. But I think this was a really, really pretty palette. I'm excited to give it a try. And then same with this KVD palette, which I found, this is the Moon Garden Vegan Eyeshadow Palette, and I found it at TJ Maxx, I want to say. And it looks like this. You know, you have some kind of warm tone neutrals here. You have these 2 olives, these two olives here, which is very much intriguing for me. And then you have a pop of a couple other colors just to sort of make it a colorful palette. But I think in general, just warm tones with those pops of olive really makes me feel that like fall feeling. And then the other mainstream release that I wanted to show you is the Lorac Fairy Tale Forest palette. Now this palette definitely has sort of a more neutral, maybe could make the case for some warm leaning mattes, and then some more neutral to warm leaning kind of champagne-y golds here. And then I like the pop of these two kind of greeny olivey shades. This one especially I think is just like a perfect metallic for fall. I know Lorac palettes are not like the chicest thing out there right now, but if you try their palettes in this like new rebrand that they've done over the last couple of years, the metallics in here are actually quite nice. They do have a sort of a glittery toppery formula that is very sparkly and catches the light really nicely, especially if you're going out on like a date night or movies or something where the lighting is going to be a little low. They look really, really pretty. All right. And going into some indie releases, I have already done a video on this palette. This is the Gourmand Girls Nightshade palette, and I think it definitely gives the fall feeling. I mean, obviously you've got this kind of green purple color story, but I think especially the 6 pans over here make me feel very, very like fall feelings because they're so dark and murky. So that one I want to keep using. The Blend Bunny All Done Up palette, I've used, I think I did like 1 or 2 looks out of this palette so far, so I need to try it a little bit more, but definitely because of these kind of yellowy browns, and you've got the more like red tone browns, some true neutral browns, and then these grays, I think it does really give sort of that fall color palette. And then of course you have these very beautiful sparkly shades to kind of complement the color story. So this one I'm excited to continue trying out in the fall time. This palette I got at Black Friday last year, and I still haven't gotten a chance to use it. This is the Nomad Hudson Valley palette, and it looks like this. Obviously this was their fall launch for last year, so this screams fall. I just saw the release of their new palette, like the color story launched yesterday. They showed it all off, and now there's videos going up about it. It looks so dreamy. I can't wait to get it. So that'll be another palette that I want to use in the fall. But this one I think is really pretty as well. Again, you have these kind of pretty olivey greens, and I like the sort of cool to neutral browns that they picked out over here, and then these really pops of bright reds and yellows. The Donna Fall, which I think has since been retired. This was a It's Belle Cosmetics palette, but it looks like this, and I picked this palette up. I wasn't going to pick it up initially, and then I suckered myself into it because I was seeing swatches of this shade, and this shade that were so pretty that I was like, I'm gonna need to have it. And it ended up going on, I think, a little bit of a sale right before they were retiring it, and I went ahead and picked it up, and I am not sad at all that I picked it up. I've played with this a couple of times, but just not enough to give a full review yet, so I want to continue to use that into this fall. All right, 2 more. This is Wicked Sisters Cosmetics. I have not tried anything from their brand yet, but I did see that they had a sale a couple weeks ago, and I picked this palette up. This is, what are you called? What are you called? I don't know what you're called. So this is this palette, whatever it's called, and then the inside looks like this. I like that it has all the swampy greens, of course. I like these pops of like true yellow in here. I like these pops of true yellow, and then I really like this kind of berry row here, because berries in the fall, like, I'm not at all opposed to that. I think that's really pretty. So I'm excited to kind of get this palette out, give it a try. Ooh. I'm excited to get this palette out and give it a try for sure. And then last but not least, in my fall themed palettes that are not Halloween, I have the Clarity Croc palette, and it looks like this. Now I have one shade that's a little bit broken here, so I have to be a little bit careful with this palette, but I do think it's another palette that screams like cool toned fall palette. This I could make the case is a little bit on the warm side, but everything else in here I think speaks cool pretty easily, and I think it's going to be a really beautiful palette to kind of mix up and smoke everything out and then put one of these really pretty shimmers onto the lid. This one has like a super sparkly quality, so I think it'll make a great topper as well. And so overall, I think it's going to be a great addition for my fall palettes. All right. And with that being said, oh my gosh. With that being said, those are 10 palettes that I have tried that I do really like for fall, and 10 palettes I haven't tried that I want to try this fall. Leave me a comment down below. What are some palettes that you really like to bring out during fall time, or what are some palettes you're excited to try during the fall? I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! May I help you?
Are you recording?
Yes. No. Love you.
Let's go outside.
Right now? Right now? Give me like 6 minutes to film this stack.
Is there a man in here?
No. Babe! You're a psychopath.